One of the things that my family has learned, because we've been the targets of many serpentine attacks, is that we could turn an attack into an opportunity if we were careful, if we looked for the opportunity, if we could see the adversarial force even as, it's very stretching things to say this, but as something to be grateful for. It is definitely the case that the journalists who've attacked me the most viciously have been the most profound contributors to my success. Well, isn't that strange though, right? Because that isn't what you'd think. And so what we learned was that when we were attacked, if we could hold our ground and try to, I don't mean seek naively for the silver lining in the sort of sense that this is the best of all possible worlds in that Panglossian sense, but to turn even adversarial challenge into a field of opportunity, that's a practice, right? It's something you can get better and better at. And in any situation, no matter how difficult, perhaps it's your ability to seek out what you could be humbly grateful for that will guide you through it. So imagine, I've seen this when people were encountering death. So when my wife's mother died, she died of a terrible degenerative neurological condition akin to Alzheimer's. And it was pretty damn brutal because neurological diseases are pretty brutal. And so we just lost pieces of her, day by day for 15 years. And it was quite the catastrophe for the family, but it was something to watch too, because her husband, Del Roberts, my father-in-law, who was quite the man about town in our little town. He was like the most extroverted person in the whole town. And he is quite the party animal and a great guy, great sense of humor. He cared for his wife so diligently that it was really a miracle to watch. And his children were grateful to him for that. And it increased their love for him. And as she died, and then when she died, the family looked at each other and realized what they had in each other. And they pulled together in quite a remarkable way, dispensing with many of the unpleasant and unnecessary fractious disagreements that had destroyed their unity or had impaired their unity. They had a pretty good family, but no family is perfect. They came together in this time of death, and it was partly because they looked around to see what they had that they could be grateful for. And what was so interesting about that was that it was a balm, B-A-L-M, for the death itself. It isn't like my mother-in-law's death was nothing. It wasn't like that didn't tear a hole in the fabric of the family's being, but because they were able to orient themselves to what was good that they had with themselves, which in some sense was an infinite resource that they could draw on, as of yet unrevealed possibilities of love to provide them with succor through their grief. And then that became permanent. And so you just don't know, how skillful could you get if one of the things you practiced was gratitude? And then you can also think of it not as a form of naivety, because naive people can be grateful because they don't know better, but as a form of courage, right? Because the world is a terrible and formidable place, and you have real adversaries, and sometimes deadly adversaries in nature and in culture. And if you can cultivate that sense of rigorous gratitude, then God only knows what you could extract even from the worst of situations. And don't you need to know how you could best extract what was best from the worst of situations? And gratitude is one of the virtues that allows you to do exactly that. And so it's worth practicing, right? It's a practice. It's a courageous practice. It's not just something you should do, right? It's something that illuminates everything. To see the mystery and beauty in things, even in moments of tragedy. That's a real art, It's the art of great artists to do that. In the Brothers Karamazov, for example, it's pretty obvious that Ivan, who is the atheistic and charismatic brother, Karamazov, is the intellectual superior to Alyosha, and also he's superior rhetorically. He makes one of the best cases for atheism on moral grounds that has ever been made in literature. But Alyosha is by far the more morally superior character. And you you experience that moral superiority implicitly by watching how he manifests himself in the book. It's not an intellectual argument, it's an argument of narrative. And so Dostoevsky can show how the properly oriented soul can defeat even the sharpest rational intellect. And Dostoevsky explores that again in The Idiot, because Mishkin is a savior figure. And although in some sense you might say he loses all the battles, he wins the war. And that's a useful thing to know about your life, is that, but this is, for example, I think why it requires faith to tell the truth. And why faith is a necessity. Faith is a necessity because you don't know what you're doing. And you can't in any final sense. So you have to always leap into the darkness. You have no choice. Well, you do. You can not leap into the darkness, but then the darkness just engulfs you. So that's a choice, but it's not a good one. Because you're ignorant in some fundamental sense, and because the future differs from the past, you have to leap into the unknown with principle. And one principle can be that the truth will set you free. And then the question is, well, how is that manifest? You say, well, I get in trouble when I tell the truth. It's like, yeah, fair enough. You also get in trouble when you don't tell the truth. You get to choose between the kinds of trouble, but you don't get to dispense with trouble itself. And the thing, what you have to decide this, is that if you build a world based on truth around you, is that the best of all possible worlds? And you can't use any given outcome to inform that, because many times when you say what you have to say, the first response is going to be trouble. And you'll think, well, I should have just lied. And why do you lie? Well, you lie so you don't get in trouble, obviously. Or you lie because you want to gain something that's not yours by right. And so you take this short-term approach to extracting order from chaos, and you think that's a victory, but it's not. It's a loss. But the loss is in some sense only demonstrable by faith, right? Is the world that you extract using truth the best possible world? You have to stake your life on that to find out. There's no other way of finding out. So, and that's what Mishkin does in The Idiot. And so everyone thinks he's an idiot, but what did Carl Jung say? The fool is the precursor to the savior. And that's true in many, many ways. It's many, many ways. And so, naive people blurt out the truth because they don't know any better, but wise people tell the truth because they know it's the best way forward. And both of them might look like fools, but that doesn't mean that they are. So